Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. Buonasera. The Italian Culture Institute is really delighted to host this very special event organized with the Italy America Chamber of Commerce West and the Italian National Tourist Agency for the cultural promotion of Southern Italy. I would like to welcome the Honorable Consul General of Italy, Antonio Verde, and also acknowledge the presence of two officers from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Councillor Trifone and Dr. Giulio De Maria. This event is part of a project of the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage and Tourism, the intermediate body for cultural, natural, and tourist attractions that promotes culture, nature, wine, and food traditions of the Italian territory via a new tourist strategy that envisages the port as a gateway. For foreigners and Italians anchoring in those ports of southern Italy that are included in the Marina network, this project has created a set of itineraries for discovering a country where art, nature, and culture collide. Emanuela Panebianco, Executive Director of the Italy America Chamber of Commerce West, will tell you more about it and this great project dedicated to less famous but equally beautiful areas of Italy. Please now join me in welcoming the Honorable Consul General of Italy, Antonio Verde.
So, buonasera, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's event. Signa Maris, that's Signs of the Sea. That's an initiative that celebrates the bucolic splendor of southern Italy, together with its exceptional artistic heritage and unbelievable cultural and culinary diversity. Signa Maris is an initiative originating from the Italian Ministry of Culture, Heritage and Tourism, aiming to promote the southern regions of Italy as custodians of untapped itineraries molded by the Mediterranean Sea. In addition, Signa Maris emphasized the importance of seaports as an essential element to the sustainable growth of local and external economies. And that's why I'm very glad to be here supporting the Signa Maris initiative, which shines the spotlight on the regions of Campania, that's also my own region, so let me be parochial, Calabria, Puglia, and Sicily. Let's say, enjoy the evening, thank you very much for your attention, and let me leave the floor to the Executive Director of the Italy America Chamber of Commerce West, Emanuela Panebianco. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt. Before Emanuela starts, just a communication here. Mr. Karl Schusterman, if you're here with us, you have lost your wallet. I'm having you here, so please don't tape this, okay? So sorry to interrupt, just to make sure it's here, so if you don't mind coming and taking it from me. Otherwise, exactly, will be a donation. Don't forget, by the way. No, Emanuela, come here with me. Because we have a new program. We have joined forces with the Italian American Chamber of Commerce West, and we have a special joint membership program. So if you become a member of the Institute or the Chamber, you get a discount on each other. So that's a new partnership.
And a free book this evening.
Yes, exactly.
Great free gifts, absolutely. So, thank you. Well, welcome everyone, and once again, thank you for joining us this evening. I am very excited about the program this evening, and I would like to share with you just a few words about Signa Maris initiative and our program. As the Consul General was mentioning, the objective is to promote tourism in Italy by way of sea and really increase the access to Italy's many historic and cultural and national treasures by way of its ports, and especially those in the southern regions. Signa Maris therefore focuses in fact on nautical tourism as a unique experience to be espoused with Italy's cultural and natural heritage and the use of the Marina network, resulting in greater visitor traffic. Tonight's program, basically there will be a short video by Signa Maris introducing its initiative and presentation of the regions, followed by, with a special focus on Calabria, followed by the presentation by our uniquely qualified and special guest speaker, Amy Riolo. At 6:30, we'll play a video about these regions prepared by the Agenzia Nazionale del Turismo, ENIT, followed by the special food and wine reception, which is featuring these regional specialties, and conclude our educational and fun evening by 8 p.m. So that's the program overall. You may have noticed on your chair there are a couple of items that are really important. One is a brochure about Signa Maris. The other one is a survey. And we would really appreciate it if you'd fill it out and leave it. There is a box where you can leave your survey responses by the book, where the book signing will occur, and then we'll gather the information, and in collaboration with ENIT, we're working on developing follow-up plan for travel to Italy. So you'll hear more information about that, but please do not forget to leave your survey information there. About our special guest this evening, again, Amy Riolo is uniquely qualified to provide you with an in-depth presentation about Calabria and its surrounding region. In fact, her family is from Calabria. An award-winning author, chef, television personality, cuisine and cultural expert and educator, Amy is known for sharing history, culture, and nutrition, and is tireless advocate of our Mediterranean diet. She makes frequent appearances on radio and TV programs, both in the US and abroad. You may have seen her yourself on Fox TV, CBS, Hallmark Channel, Nile TV, the Travel Channel, Martha Stewart Living Radio, and Abu Dhabi Television. Amy created the weekly 90-second cooking videos entitled Culture of Cuisine, which air on nationally syndicated news shows in 28 different channels across the US. As a respected culinary diplomat, Amy has created menus, culinary ceremonies, and educational seminars for diplomats, international chefs, and world leaders, earning her a title of Cook to the Kings by Caro newspaper in 2008. She was recently awarded a Wise Women 2015 award for the National Organization of Italian American Women. Her work has appeared in numerous print media, including USA Today, Cooking Light Magazine, The Washington Post, CNN, Wall Street Journal, Gulf News, Jerusalem Post Magazine, Popular Anthropology Magazine, and international newspapers. She has traveled all the way from Washington, D.C. to be with us tonight. So with no further ado, please do help us welcome Amy Riolo.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. Buonasera. The Italian Culture Institute is really delighted to host this very special event organized with the Italy America Chamber of Commerce West and the Italian National Tourist Agency for the cultural promotion of Southern Italy. I would like to welcome the Honorable Consul General of Italy, Antonio Verde, and also acknowledge the presence of two officers from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Councillor Trifone and Dr. Giulio De Maria. This event is part of a project of the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage and Tourism, the intermediate body for cultural, natural, and tourist attractions that promotes culture, nature, wine, and food traditions of the Italian territory via a new tourist strategy that envisages the port as a gateway. For foreigners and Italians anchoring in those ports of southern Italy that are included in the Marina network, this project has created a set of itineraries for discovering a country where art, nature, and culture collide. Emanuela Panebianco, Executive Director of the Italy America Chamber of Commerce West, will tell you more about it and this great project dedicated to less famous but equally beautiful areas of Italy. Please Now join me in welcoming the Honorable Consul General of Italy, Antonio Verde.
So, buonasera, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's event. Signa Maris, that's Signs of the Sea. That's an initiative that celebrates the bucolic splendor of southern Italy, together with its exceptional artistic heritage and unbelievable cultural and culinary diversity. Signa Maris is an initiative originating from the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage and Tourism, aiming to promote the southern regions of Italy as custodians of untapped itineraries molded by the Mediterranean Sea. In addition, Signa Maris emphasized the importance of seaports as an essential element to the sustainable growth of local and external economies. And that's why I'm very glad to be here supporting the Signa Maris initiative, which shines the spotlight on the regions of Campania, that's also my own region, so let me be parochial, Calabria, Puglia, and Sicily. Let's say, enjoy the evening, thank you very much for your attention, and let me leave the floor to the Executive Director of the Italy America Chamber of Commerce West, Emanuela Panebianco. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt. Before Manuela starts, I have just a communication here. Mr. Karl Schusterman, if you're here with us, you have lost your wallet. I'm having you here, so please don't tape this, okay? So sorry to interrupt, just to make sure it's here, so if you don't mind coming and taking it from me. Otherwise, exactly, it will be a donation. Don't forget, by the way, no, Manuela, come here with me. Because we have a new program. We have joined forces with the Italian-American Chamber of Commerce West, and we have a special joint membership program. So if you become a member of the Institute or the Chamber, you get a discount on each other. So that's a new partnership.
And a free book this evening.
Yes, exactly.
Great free gifts, absolutely. So, thank you. Well, welcome everyone, and once again, thank you for joining us this evening. I am very excited about the program this evening, and I would like to share with you just a few words about Signa Maris initiative and our program. As the Consul General was mentioning, the objective is to promote tourism in Italy by way of sea and really increase the access to Italy's many historic and cultural and national treasures by way of its ports, and especially those in the southern regions. Signa Maris therefore focuses in fact on nautical tourism as a unique experience to be espoused with Italy's cultural and natural heritage and the use of the marina network, resulting in greater visitor traffic. Tonight's program, basically there will be a short video by Signa Maris introducing its initiative and presentation of the regions, followed by, with a special focus on Calabria, followed by the presentation by our uniquely qualified and special guest speaker, Amy Riolo. At 6:30, we'll play a video about these regions prepared by the Agenzia Nazionale del Turismo, ENIT, followed by the special food and wine reception, which is featuring these regional specialties, and conclude our educational and fun evening by 8 p.m. So that's the program overall. You may have noticed on your chair there are a couple of items that are really important. One is a brochure about Signa Maris. The other one is a survey. And we would really appreciate it if you'd fill it out and leave it. There is a box where you can leave your survey responses by the book, where the book signing will occur. And then we'll gather the information, and in collaboration with ENIT, we're working on developing follow-up plan for travel to Italy. So you'll hear more information about that, but please do not forget to leave your survey information there. About our special guest this evening, Again, Amy Riolo is uniquely qualified to provide you with an in-depth presentation about Calabria and its surrounding region. In fact, her family is from Calabria. An award-winning author, chef, television personality, cuisine and cultural expert and educator, Amy is known for sharing history, culture, and nutrition, and is tireless advocate of our Mediterranean diet. She makes frequent appearances on radio and TV programs both in the US and abroad. You may have seen her yourself on Fox TV, CBS, Hallmark Channel, Nile TV, the Travel Channel, Martha Stewart Living Radio, and Abu Dhabi Television. Amy created the weekly 90-second cooking videos entitled Culture of Cuisine, which air on nationally syndicated news shows in 28 different channels across the US. As a respected culinary diplomat, Amy has created menus, culinary ceremonies, and educational seminars for diplomats, international chefs, and world leaders, earning her a title of Cook to the Kings by Caro newspaper in 2008. She was recently awarded a Wise Women 2015 award for the National Organization of Italian American Women. Her work has appeared in numerous print media, including USA Today, Cooking Light Magazine, The Washington Post, CNN, Wall Street Journal, Gulf News, Jerusalem Post Magazine, Popular Anthropology Magazine, and international newspapers. She has traveled all the way from Washington, D.C. to be with us tonight. So with no further ado, please do help us welcome Amy Riolo.
And it's situated between the trade routes from Messina to Catania. So people originally just looked at it for this reason. But in the 19th century, it actually became an important refuge for a lot of artists. People like Oscar Wilde and Nietzsche and kings of Russia would actually go and stay there. So it became kind of a hot spot, and it still is today. In the Greek amphitheater, which you see on the right, this is where we hold Italian film festivals. So it's something that for the last few centuries has really, really been a place for the elite to go and to escape to. And since we're in Sicily, I'd also like to talk about the Pistacchi di Bronte. Bronte is located about a kilometer and a half from Mount Etna, so it's very rich in volcanic soil. And for those of you who don't know, volcanic soil has so many minerals in it that it really helps agricultural products to grow. And not only do they grow, but they grow better than they usually do in other places. So pistachios, along with citrus and other things that came to Sicily from the Arabs, when they were transplanted in Bronte, they really flourished and they did well. So in Sicily, you'll see a lot of traditional things that are made other ways in other places in Italy, made with pistachios. And in Sicily, Bronte is the only place where they grow in Sicily. So you see, for example, the marzipan that's around the cassata cake. Normally, in many places in Italy, they make that with almonds, but here in Bronte, they'll often do it with pistachios. And also the pesto sauce is made with pistachios in this area. The Bronte pistachios are very expensive because they can only be cultivated every other year, and they have to be done by hand. So for this reason, they're a little bit pricey, but they're definitely worth their price. Also, in all four regions, we have a lot of traditions around almonds, and that is also something that came due to the Arab influence. Here you see all of the fruits. Those look like beautiful little fruits there, but they're made out of marzipan. And this is a tradition that you can find in Sicily and in Puglia and in Campania and Calabria, especially more and more around the holidays. Marzipan is a mixture, an almond paste that's made with sugar that actually has Bedouin origins from North Africa, but very, very popular in these four regions. And then on the right, you'll also see a traditional Pugliese sweet. In Puglia, there's the town of Alberobello, which is known for its little homes that are called trulli. Has anybody been to them? Okay. They're beautiful. You know, we joke that they look like a home that a gnome would live in, but they're absolutely very beautiful. And how this tradition happened was back in the 16th century, there were about 40 families that were settled there, and they were given homes so that they could work the land. And they were encouraged to make these homes with a dry stone and not to use any kind of cement or anything that would be added to them. They had to just do it that way. And later on, for the centuries that continued, a lot of the counts and the rulers would prohibit the use of anything else other than this. So now they have about 11,000 families in this town, and you can see there are many, many different trulli. So this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and they're protected. It's an absolutely beautiful place to visit. Also, in all 4 regions, we have our own pasta making traditions. If any of you are interested in the history of pasta or in more of these, you can Google my name in Popular Anthropology magazine, or just look on my blog and you'll see the full history of these types of pastas. But we had pasta in southern Italy about 4 centuries before they had it the Etruscans had it in Tuscany, millennia before Marco Polo, but it doesn't get mentioned. So we had lagane that came from Greece. And this type of working dough and things was taking place very, very early on. Here you can see the green, these are spinach orecchiette, and then we have also the regular flour orecchiette. Next to them, up to the right that look like little chains, these are busiate there's a Sicilian type of pasta. And we also have over to the left the cavatelli that they have in Calabria and in Puglia and Basilicata. So there are literally hundreds of different types of artisan pasta dishes that are being made and enjoyed. And this is something that we need to carry on as well, because as people go to modern types of culinary schools, they don't necessarily promote all of these. These were types of traditions that were handed down from mothers to daughters over the years. So nowadays, chefs are teaming up with grandmothers and with female pasta makers from towns to be able to learn these traditions before they get lost. And in Basilicata, they actually have something called the Pasta Lab, which they're holding every year. And that's a wonderful tradition. In Campania, you have this beautiful juxtaposition between very simple pleasures in life and also the grand and most luxurious type of things that you could imagine. The place on the left we have is Reggio di Caserta, and this is a place that is the royal palace in Caserta. And what it is synonymous to Naples what Versailles is to Paris. So this is located about 20 kilometers outside of Naples, but this was developed in the mid-18th century for the kings who were there. And it was actually Charles VII who they developed this for. This place is so massive that it has 1,200 rooms, 40 monumental rooms, which in comparison to Versailles only has 22. All of these beautiful frescoes, it has many fountains and many types of gardens. It's the largest royal palace in the world, believe it or not, and it was definitely a symbol of the times and kind of the epitome of the grandness of Naples and the region at that time. So that's definitely something that can be, that you can go and visit. Have any of you ever seen the movie Mission Impossible? Okay, so in the 3rd version, in the Vatican scene, when the car comes through and everything explodes, that was not the Vatican. That was actually this building where they shot that. And over on the right, you can see the marina and the porto here of Naples and how beautiful that is and just kind of how serene. They still have a lot of wonderful folklore that can be witnessed in Naples that is not everywhere. And I think that this idea of the marine life and the folklore is every bit as part of Neapolitan culture as is the castle on the left. Another area that I'd like to mention are the Blue Mountains of Calabria, and this is the area of Aspromonte. In English we call them the Blue Mountains, but Aspro in Greek actually means white because they had snow covering on them. They're very, very high. So what's interesting for those of you, how many of you who are not Italian have been to Calabria? Okay, a couple of you. That's good. So for those of you who have never been before, what's neat about it is that in addition to the 3 coastlines that have the water, we also have about 800 coastlines that are mountain ranges. So it's a very narrow region where you can literally, a lot of places, look and see the sea on one side and the mountains on the other. And in 1968, the national parks were kind of institutionalized here. And we have in the region of Cosenza the Sila Grande, and in Catanzaro the Sila Piccola, and then Aspromonte is in the region of Reggio Calabria. And they have a microclimate there that is so wonderful that they're able to grow the famous bergamot fruit, which I'll talk about a little bit more later, a lot of vines, a lot of olives, a lot of things that people don't know how great they are. It's because they're from this region. We talked a little bit about how the regions throughout history were able to coincide and have a lot of similarities. So if you look over to the map on the left, this would be the time about of Magna Grecia in antiquity, and about 5th century before the Common Era. You can see all the yellow area, part of Sicily, all of Calabria, most of what is now Basilicata, part of Campania, and Puglia are all part of the same region. And this is very important because this is why we have some of the similar dishes and some of the similar traditions, but because of local dialects, they may be called different things. It could be the very same recipe or the very same design, but it's called something different in each place's dialect. And then if you forward to 1000 in the Common Era, which was under the Byzantine time, you can see in the purple, Sicily was different then because it was already controlled by the Arabs, but the Byzantines had Calabria and they had Puglia and part of Campania, and then Basilicata and the other part of Calabria were under the Principality of Salerno, so they were a little different. So because of all of these overlapping times, it helps us to have a lot in common. And I like to mention to people, especially the Italian Americans, as we look into our own history. Sometimes people forget, and a lot of times the Italian Americans identify themselves with Rome before thinking about really what part maybe their ancestors were from, and there are so many other indigenous tribes in Italy that it's important to be able to know who comes from where. So Tuscany, originally in the ancient times, they had the Etruscans. In Campania, we had the Samnites. The Messapians and the Apulians, this is how Puglia got its name, in Puglia. The Sicani were in Sicily. And Calabria was home to the Enotri, coming from the Greek word enos, or wine, and the Itali. And the original indigenous settlements of Italy were actually in Lucania, or in Basilicata, and those go back 700,000 years. So Magna Grecia spanned from the 9th to the 5th century before the Common Era, and this Magna Grecia meant Greater Greece. So this was not an area, as it's often depicted in Wikipedia, as somewhere where people were exiled from Greece, or where they sent the Greeks who they didn't like, or some kind of prison colony. It was actually a place that they really wanted to develop because they realized its potential, and they wanted it to be part of the Greek Empire and to be very inclusive. So they would come to this region, and they would bring things, and they would take things back and forth, and they really kind of assimilated into the culture. And the Greeks used Calabrian wine, for example, to feed to the Olympic champions in the Olympics. Some of our dishes native to the region, like stufato and pasticcio, come from the stufado and the pasticcio that they have in Greece until now. And there is a dialect called Greco, which is protected by UNESCO. It's an ancient Italian/ancient Greek language that is on the risk of being forgotten. There is a region called Ciro Marina, a very beautiful town, and we have some wine from there outside today, actually, for people to sample who have never been there. I love Ciro Marina because as my family's driving south from Rome to go to Calabria, this is the place where we first start to hit the sea, and I know in just about 20 kilometers we're going to be home. And so for me, it's like the most beautiful grounding place on the planet. But this is home to a special kind of grape called the Galliopo, and you'll be able to taste that tonight. It's called the blackberry grape, but it has a special, powerful, really tannic quality to it, so I hope that you'll be able to pair that. Knowing that this grape and that this wine was made by the Greeks and cultivated specifically so that they could feed it to the champions in the Olympics, I think adds a nice value to it. And there are many, I could do a 30-minute presentation just on the history of that particular wine. So sometimes when you go to a wine pairing and they have this Calabrian wine there, and they'll say, oh, this is a Southern Italian wine, and they'll give it to the people there, and they'll taste it, and then they'll go on to the Super Tuscan, which is great. I have nothing against Super Tuscans. But I think if they could just tell them a little bit about this type of story, people would appreciate more and understand why it has the value and the price that it has. So two of the wines, other than the ones that we have today, there's a Rosato, and also from Ciro, and you can also taste the little more high-end version called Gravello. Another interesting tradition that they have in Calabria and Sicilia is sword fishing. And this is something that's taken place since the 10th century. It's kind of dying out now. It's something that we hope to preserve, but it's an ancient tradition. The way that they fish for the swordfish was the way they did in the 10th century. You can imagine seeing a fish like that. They're very hard to catch. So when the Arabs came, they taught the locals how to catch for them. And there is a name for the person who goes out on the untri, or the boat. The person who goes in the front, at the head of the boat, is called rais, which means president, or like capo in Arabic. And they're still called that to this day because they respect that tradition and where they learned. So if you ever go to this region, definitely try the swordfish recipes. And if you're lucky enough, if they every now and then they still have the sagre. Most of them are in Sardinia now. Not all of them are in Calabria and Sicily. But if you're able to catch one, it's a beautiful tradition. In the region, we have a lot of ancient mythology and mention about early religion. And sometimes people mistake that because they think maybe the area was full of peasants, so that's why they were looking for some kind of hope and some kind of inspiration. But it's actually the opposite. This area was kind of ground zero for mythology and for spirituality, long before it was ever really truly needed because of catastrophe. When you go there and you see the majesticness of the place and feel the energy, you can really understand how these type of concepts would have been popular there. One of my favorite people in history is Pythagoras. Most of you, I'm sure, have heard of the Pythagorean theorem. Raise your hand if you have not heard of the Pythagorean theorem. Okay. For the non-Italians, raise your hand if before today you never heard of Crotone. How many of you heard of Crotone before today? Okay, not many. So this is my point. Pythagoras came to Crotone in the 6th century, and he founded a secret society of intellectuals there. His secret society was the one that the Freemasons followed centuries later. It was very progressive for his time. He let women study. He not only taught math, but also religion. He was the founder of vegetarianism in the West. He believed that we came back in many forms and many lives, including animals. So he didn't want us to eat animals. So he actually, to be a member of his school, you had to be vegetarianism. You had to live a certain way. He was all about Calabria, but this is not how the story went. He was from Samos, in Greece, an island, and he left. He went to Egypt, and he studied with a lot of the sages there. Then he came to Crotone and founded the school. And then he went to Metaponto, which now is in Basilicata, but originally they were one region, and passed away there. Many people believe that his father was from Metaponto, and there's speculation that maybe he was even born in Metaponto before he went to Greece. But anyway, these regions were all part of Magna Grecia. So this type of enlightenment and these types of thoughts and thinking were going on very, very early in this part of the world. We also had the flavor bases set up for our food very early on. Things like onions and garlic, and anchovy, capers, and marjoram. A lot of condiments, of course, olive oil, basil, sage, oregano, honey, parsley, and rosemary. Things that we eat every day today. Honey, they have a lot of indigenous greens there, a lot of seafoods, and if you're not with Pythagoras, meats that were eaten in the antiquity that are eaten nowadays. And what's important to note about this is I tell people, especially as I promote the Mediterranean diet, whenever you're trying to cut fat from a recipe, you don't want to cut flavor. So mostly we get our flavor nowadays from sugar and fat, and those are the things we need to cut when we're on a diet. So this is the place you can get your flavor. You can also get a lot of medicinal benefits and without any of the unwanted calories or unwanted benefits. I'd like to talk a little bit about Reggio Calabria. This was the ancient region that was called Region. It was founded as a flourishing colony by the Greeks, and it was important to maintain the economic ties between Sicily and Italy. This was like the strategic point to be able to do all of that. For those of you who haven't really explored the magnificence of Sicily throughout history, you have to understand that it's the largest island in the Mediterranean. So any caliphate, any empire that was coming through that wanted to gain access to the Mediterranean and basically Asia, the free world, wanted control of Sicily. Many people controlled Sicily before they went on to control Cairo or other places in the world. So this was very, very important. And Reggio Calabria gained all of that from them and became a very important trading center. So there's a lot of wealth, a lot of beauty, a lot of industry there from very early on. And this is my father's family's homeland, is Crotone. So the citizens there in antiquity were known for their physical strength. There were a lot of the Olympic champions came from there, but also there were a lot, Herodotus believed that they were the best doctors in the world. There's also a town very nearby called Sibari, which was so wealthy during the 6th century before the Common Era that its name actually became synonymous with wealth itself. And it had a lot of wealth for two reasons. One, the agricultural crops that it had. It was very, very rich in agriculture. And also, they had this notion, unlike the other Greek colonies, that if you came in as a refugee or as an immigrant, they would accept you and give you citizenship and equal status as everybody else immediately. So very progressive, thinking of the terms that we have going on in the world today for the 6th century before the Common Era. And for when we hear about things like, their agriculture was great, it's hard to understand today why that's so important. And a lot of times in modern industry and modern governments and economies, we tend to downplay agriculture. But in these days, agriculture was actually a form of wealth. A lot of foods, crops were forms of wealth. Lentils were exchanged like gold. Wheat was exchanged like gold. Spices were often more expensive than gold. So it's very important to know that whoever had this type of agriculture controlled the region. That's how the ancient Egyptians became so prominent. This is Mille, who was a wrestler from Crotone in the 6th century before the Common Era. Became very popular. A lot of French and a lot of Italian Renaissance sculptors would all of a sudden were very interested in him and would do works on him. This is the Temple of Hera. This is just outside Crotone in Capocolonna, which is on the Ionian Sea. Hera was the mythological figure who was Zeus's wife. She, like Pythagoras, hailed from Samos in Greece and made her way to Crotone. And the other temple for her is at Metaponto, where it's rumored that Pythagoras actually died. And so this was originally, it had 6 columns to it. Now it only has 1. But it's very beautiful. And if you ever go to these regions, it's really important to go to the Greek ruins, because not only because they're a little piece of Greece there, but it shows how important these regions were to Greece, that they would come and erect these type of structures. And it's actually a fact that there are more Greek ruins in Sicily today than there are in Greece. Here's a little bit about the olives in Calabria. There are three main types, although there are many, but there are three main types that are protected and that get exported and have the kind of the DOP stamp. And those are the Lamezia and the Bruzio and the Alto Crotonese. So the Alto Crotonese comes from the Byzantine period. And this is a little bit of a lighter oil. Both the Bruzio and the Lamezia originally came from the Greeks. The Lamezia is the one with the lowest acidity, and it's made from mostly Carolea olives. So it's a really high quality. For those of you who aren't too familiar with the quality of olive oil, the lower the acidity it is, the higher quality it is. Also, the lower the acidity it is, the higher the smoke point will be, which means you can fry with it. And I know everywhere you hear on TV you can't fry with olive oil has a low smoke point. It's not true. It's just because the quality that we were using in this country in the beginning was so inferior that it didn't allow us to reach those smoke points. But the lower acidity rates will let you do that. In Italy, everybody fries with olive oil, and they're fine, and it's delicious and healthful as well. This is a little bit about Italy's olive oil. I want to talk about it because it's important. The four regions that we're talking about today represent 84% of the olive oil production in Italy. Yet, when you think about who has the most luxurious kind of connotation towards olive oil, it's not these regions. A lot of Americans would not necessarily go to the store and say, purposely, I'm going to buy Sicilian olive oil, or I'm going to buy a Pugliese olive oil, I'm going to go buy a Calabrese olive oil, or one from Campania. They would think about other regions that are in the north that have more noteworthy, maybe tourism attractions or places that they visited. But 84% is coming from this region. So it's among us, the Italy lovers and the Italians and the Italian Americans in the room, to really spread the word about the greatness of the olives and the olive oils coming from the south, because a great deal of the Italian economy depends on it. This is the Romans in the 5th century and their trade routes. As you can see, going from Rome, they're going down all the way via Appia Antica and going all the way into Puglia. These were the trade routes that they were having. So a lot of synergy was going back and forth between Puglia and Rome during this region. And then later on, in the Byzantine period, for example, as they controlled other areas were part of Puglia, and Puglia was part of them, so they gained some of that Roman access as well. One of the things that the Romans did in order to gain wealth was impose heavy taxes. And one of the things that they taxed the most heavily was salt. So you know that we have a lot of wonderful salt areas. We're going to talk about Salina later. Maybe you've heard of Trapani in Sicily, and places where salt is cultivated. But the average person couldn't get salt because it was too expensive because of the taxes that they imposed on it. So what they did was they preserved the fish in salt. There were no taxes on the preserved fish. So people started using the preserved fish as a flavor base where they couldn't add salt. And then this changed kind of the whole world, because all of a sudden you have these wonderful recipes born with a little bit of a background of anchovy taste and salt that are typical to the region, that weren't necessarily sought out to have anchovy, but they benefited from this in the long run. And as we look into Christianity, it's really important to think about, in addition to the religious and the cultural implications, the food of Italy would be completely different today if it weren't for the notion of Christianity. Not only because of the spiritual notion that goes into food and the holidays and all of those wonderful things, but also because of the monasteries and the convents, which housed a lot of wonderful cooks, which had the money and the resources to develop new recipes, and also which could archive things. The average person in those days couldn't write. So nobody from the 12th or the 13th or the 14th century who was an average person was going to be at home writing a recipe and documenting what went into the Pope's whatever. But the people who were in the churches could. And so because of that, the food historians have really wonderful access into like a lens into what people were eating. And we also know that those recipes and traditions were maintained through the monasteries and through the convents for many, many centuries. Things like cannoli, for example, and different types of wine, and ravioli. Ravioli was often given to the priests as a gift and to the monks during the 12th century. So this is why ravioli is kind of synonymous with Christmas nowadays. And also, have any of you heard of the Feast of Seven Fishes? Okay, so the tradition, the Christian tradition behind that are because there are 7 sacraments, but also some people do 9 because they believe in representing the Trinity times 3, and some people do 13 because they want to symbolize the 12 apostles plus Jesus. Something else interesting that you can look at. A while ago, I did a lecture for the Les Dames d'Escoffier and the Diplomatic Culinary Partnership through the State Department, and we talked about sacred foods of Italy at a restaurant called El Tiramisu in Washington, D.C. And it was very interesting because we looked at, starting in the pagan times through the Christian times, and we talked about all of these wonderful traditions and how they flourished. Well, one of the things that was really unique, as they were promoting Christianity and trying to get people to convert, if you were mostly people who were earning your living off of agriculture. And in the times of the gods and the goddesses, all you could really look to was Saturn, because Saturn was the god of agriculture, and that's who people were looking to for protection. All of a sudden, when the religion came, you have hundreds of saints that represent every different type of food, every different type of drought, every different type of famine, every different type of ailment that could potentially harm or insect your products. You now have a saint to pray to kind of ward that off. So this is one of the things that helped Christianity to be perpetuated throughout the South. And this is a dialect saying that without the holidays, nobody would believe in the saints. And that kind of idea is true not only in modern times and throughout the Middle Ages, but also in antiquity. This is one of the things that helped people to kind of believe. So we have many wonderful holiday recipes, Easter recipes, the feast of San Giuseppe, San Rocco, Sant'Antonio. Almost all of the different saint names and saint days have special typical recipes and legends that go along with them that make the cuisine really unique and really special. The artisan bread making traditions, as we mentioned earlier, have not changed that much. One of the things people need to know who aren't familiar with bread making is that nowadays we use chemical starters, but in this time they used mother yeast. And mother yeast was a naturally fermented product that you would make by, say using some dried figs or some dried dates or dried grapes and letting them ferment with a little bit of water, a little bit of wine. They would have these starters for hundreds of years. And every time they make the bread, they use a little bit of that starter. So you cannot compare the taste or flavor or history of value of a type of bread that's made that way with something that just starts off with a commercial yeast. And this is a type of bread called pita, P-I-T-T-A, that we have in Calabria. Here are some also traditional Calabrese foods. As of course you know, there's a wonderful tradition in the South of preserving a lot of meats and of keeping them for a long time, and also the cheeses, and we have the pepperoncini there, the different types of peppers. And meatballs, or polpette. A lot of people think that the meatballs are an Italian-American invention and that Italians don't eat them. Italians do eat them, but usually as a second course, but they're especially popular in Calabria, where they find their way into soups and into lasagna and into all different types of concoctions. Now, remember in the beginning when I was starting out and I mentioned how when I wanted to do research on Italy, all the word that I could find was infertile? Well, when I finally got to the heart of my research, I found that it was in Byzantium that Calabria was actually named, and it actually comes from a Byzantine term, kalos brou, which means fertile earth. So it's very ironic that in the 20th century we're known abroad as being infertile when the Byzantines actually gave us the name, which means fertile. You can see a lot of examples of Byzantine architecture in the towns of Stilo and Rossano. And this is a map dating back to about 1000. All the blue area is the Byzantine region. So you can see how much southern Italy had in common with the East at that point. Also during this empire, we had about 12,000 Jews in Calabria. There were many Hellenistic or Greek Jews that came to Calabria in order to flee the Roman invasion of Jerusalem. And they stayed there pretty much until the Spaniards started coming to Calabria. And then in the 10th century, we had the Arab influence. And a lot of things changed culinarily speaking. The citrons, or the cedro, which we're going to talk about later, the zabib, or grapes. Zabib actually means raisin in Arabic. Watermelons, gelato, new techniques like we talked about earlier for the swordfish, pistachios, bergamot, almonds, and the alchemy of distillation all came at this time. There are many towns in these regions that have Arabic names. Bari, for example, in Arabic means the overpowering Lord. Marsala comes from Mars Allah, which means the port of Allah in Arabic. Palermo, Bilharm, which means Bilharim, which means with the women in Arabic. So all of these towns that are very prominent in our area, a lot of them have significant Arabic names. This is the bergamot over on the left from Calabria, which is a wonderful citrus fruit. It has a little bit of a, for those of you who haven't had it before, if you ever have Earl Grey tea, the thing that distinguishes the Earl Grey tea from regular tea is the flavor of bergamot. They make it into gelato and into mousses and perfumes and all kinds of products. And then on the right, we have the cedro, or the citron. So for those of you who haven't had that fresh before, it's very different from what you get in the supermarket at Christmas time that looks like cut up jellyfish, and they put it in cannoli. The fresh thing is a whole different deal. And then we have eggplant. Eggplant is very, very traditional as well. It once was said that for a woman to get married or for a chef to get hired in the Mediterranean, they had to know at least 40 different eggplant recipes. And that's because, for those of you who grow eggplant at home, you know that when you get that crop, it's huge and you have to know kind of what to do with it. So we have ingenious ways of using the eggplant. Melanzane alla parmigiana, or eggplant parmesan, is actually a Calabrese recipe. We would think because the name Parma that it would come from there, or many people think it's different, but it's actually from Calabria because they had these dairies that were started by the Cistercian monks where they made a cheese very similar to the grana or the parmigiano from cow's milk, and they developed the recipe for it there. A lot of spices you will find in these regions that are very synonymous with the East, and that's because of the Byzantine influence and the control of the Arabs. So cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, aniseed, bay leaf, fenugreek, black pepper, sesame, sugar, vanilla, all of these things were in Calabria quite early in comparison to a lot of other, even more wealthy places in the Mediterranean, and in the neighboring regions also, not only Calabria. But they were used not only as culinary ingredients, but also as cures, and they were expensive. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of times the spices were the price of gold. So to have a little bit of clove or a little bit of cinnamon, today it's a joke because everybody has it in their cupboard, but in those days it was a major investment. So that's why a lot of the Christmas recipes and the special occasion recipes will have a little bit of those spices in them, because they were just gilding the lily a little bit by showing that they had them. And more of the royal recipes used tons of spices, especially through the Middle Ages, because they wanted to show that they could have them. That's why we have, for example, in the north, the risotto allo zafferano, alla milanese, or a little bit of nutmeg in some recipes, is for this reason. Here are two wonderful examples in Calabria of Byzantine and Norman architecture. The Cattolico di Stillo on the left and the Chiesa di Santa Filomena on the right. The Normans came in the 11th century, and this was an important region for us because, in terms of unification, because they took control of pretty much all of the south, Campania, Abruzzo, Molise, Puglia, Basilicata, and Calabria. Unfortunately, they installed the feudal system and used the peasants as workers. So a lot of kind of that downturn in terms of poverty started with the Normans and then went forward with the Spaniards under the Kingdom of Aragon. So in 1422, when Alfonso V, he became the ruler of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, or the Regno delle Due Sicilie, which it's often called in Italy. And this was a time when a lot of the local people didn't have as much power as before. So the north was experiencing a renaissance at this time, but the south was subject to a lot of heavy taxes and a lot of feudalism. The Spanish Inquisition was really enforced heavily in the south, and that's why a lot of the Jews left at that time. But there was a philosopher named Tommaso Campanella who led an uprising. A unique community to this part of southern Italy is also the Albanian communities. They came to Italy in the 15th century, and this was the pre-Ottoman times in Albania. So they left just as the Ottomans were starting to take over. So they actually speak a dialect of the Albanian language, which no longer exists. So they're like a little cultural time capsule of the way that they dress, the way that they act, the way that they talk, and the way that they eat. And we have about 40 villages today that can be visited. They're called the Arbëreshk, and they can be visited in Calabria. Other than Pythagoras, another famous mathematician from Calabria, Luigi Lilio, who gave us the Gregorian calendar. So Pythagorean theorem, Gregorian calendar, we know about those. We don't think as much about Calabria, but they both were born from the same place. And then 3 New World ingredients. In addition to everything that we got from the Arabs and from the Middle East, we also got many things from the New World, namely peppers, potatoes, and tomatoes. There's a saying that if it has those 3 ingredients in it, it's Calabrese. But those ingredients actually come from the New World. They just are particularly loved in Calabria and make their way into a lot of different recipes. In the early 19th century, Napoleon's brother was given the throne of the Kingdom of Naples, and he abolished the feudal law. So this was an advancement on our part. He started doing some public works and bettering the roads and the education system and things like that. And then, of course, Garibaldi and his troops led the movement that would eventually unify Italy. But as it's related to food and culture, he tasted at Milito di Porto Salvo in Calabria the spaghetti al pomodoro for the first time. And he said when he tasted it, I swear that this will be the dish that unifies all of Italy. So for those of you who get sick of seeing the dish and say like, oh, it's stereotypical, it is, but it is actually, Garibaldi said it was a sign of us, so I'm going with Garibaldi. And he made his soldiers bring the recipe north. So that's how the recipe spread throughout Italy. And an interesting little fact, Garibaldi actually sold pasta in Latin America before he was a soldier in the Italian army. That's how he made some of his fortune. Coming forward to present times, food and wine are the most important part of the Calabrian trade balance and a very important part of the other regions as well. 36% of the region's exports are from Europe to Japan and the US, and their olive oil production is up 56%. There's only a 1% difference between Calabria and Puglia, and they are both the prominent ones in Italy. It's currently the 4th Italian region for denominations, yet when I bug a lot of my friends who have Italian import stores and do that kind of business about the Calabrese products, they say that they don't have that many because there's not that much of a demand, but we can fix that. And so there are about 36 different denominations the foods that are protected in Calabria. If anybody's interested in that, I've also done some work, you can find it online, through the National Italian American Foundation and their Ambassador magazine, where we talk about the geographic indicators and what they mean into Italy's most popular foods. Some of the sweet treats that you can find throughout the region, of course, gelato in Sicily and Calabria. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you can get it in brioche, which if you've not had gelato in brioche, you have not lived yet. It's one of the great pleasures of life. And then up on the left, in Sicily, they call them the pupa con l'ova, or the dolls with the egg. In Calabria, we call them the cuzzupe di Pasqua, or the Easter breads with an egg that are traditional. And then down on the bottom, we have the petrali, and they're known by other names in other regions as well, which is a traditional fig cookie. On the left, these are mostaccioli in Calabria. These are these wonderful cookies that they hand carve. It looks like carved wood. They have many different shapes, and they decorate them with these foils. It's really a wonderful artistic skill. Mostaccioli, because it's a dialect word, it means other things in other languages, for example, in other dialects. In Rome, it's a chocolate cookie that's very, very different from this. And then we have the sospiri di monaca, or the nun's size cookies on the right. Another region I'd like to talk about, which is one of the islands off of Sicily, is Porto di Salina. It gets its name because of salt, and this was one of the places that was had major importance for the exportation of salt, but nowadays it's a modern resort. And for any of you who have seen the movie Il Postino, this is where that was shot. So it has 2 non-active volcanoes. It's just a wonderful natural resource and a place to visit. And I'd like to end with the Bronzi di Riace, because these are 2 bronze statues, Greek statues, that were found off the coast of Calabria in 1972. And you can see how absolutely magnificent they are, and they're on display. But I think these kind of, for anybody, symbolize a lot of this strength in Calabria from antiquity until nowadays, and also through the other neighboring regions. For those of you who were at my last talk in LA when I talked about the influences of Italian culture on America for the Italy-America Chamber of Commerce and the International Visitor Center at LA, I concluded by saying that I believe that the reason that Italians did all of the wonderful works that we talked about during that lecture was because of an insatiable quest to kind of make daily life and living itself an art form. But I believe that with the Bronzi di Riace and with all of these works in Calabria and in Puglia, Sicily, and in Campania, it's a little bit of a quest to achieve immortality, and that's the reason why we have some of the works that we were able to talk about today. I'd like to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and I have a few things I'd like to mention. This is my next cookbook, which will be coming out in January. And then over on the right is the article that I mentioned in the National Italian American Foundation's magazine. I'll have another issue coming out for Christmas with something about Christmas cookies. So thank you all very much.